you guys all for coming today. My name is Sarah Kirkley. I'm the serials librarian here at ACE Shorten Library.
And I'm Autumn Johnson. I'm the information literacy librarian, but I also work with Ann Ogden over here in special collections.
And so we're just going to start talking today about institutional repositories. This is something that we're both pretty excited about because Savannah State is going to be launching its own institutional repository. So we're going to start by just defining what exactly an institutional repository is. So it can be called a lot of things: a digital repository, a digital library, but you can think of it as a library or collection of digital objects. It's important that they are important because of what they do, which is to preserve and to make available the content of institutions, whether that output is scholarly in nature or creative. So the content that can be found in an institutional repository is varied. We'll look at some examples a little later. It's stored in a stable digital environment, so it's housed in one place for the long term. It's open access, so it's available to all for free, no subscriptions, no costs. And then it's also indexed in major internet search engines like Google, so it's more easily discovered, and it's more easily discovered by a lot more people than just your immediate campus community. So these are some just general examples of things you might find in an institutional repository: scholarly articles, teaching presentations, conference presentations, special research projects. Those are all things that faculty members can submit to be housed in the repository. Open educational resources like faculty-authored textbooks or presentations used for class that you want to make easily available to your students. Those can also be put into a repository. They can also be in the repository to be shared with other educators too. And institutional reports or documentation. So I think this morning we all got the email from Title III office. They're always really good at sending out their reports. That's an example of something that we could house here so that it's kept for the long term. And then, of course, special collections or archival materials, so things specific to the university and part of the university's history, like yearbooks, special images, works of art, things like that. Okay, so we're going to look at some different institutions and their repositories. This is part of the University of California. And in their repository, they actually have, rather than just some open access articles, they have their own open access journal. It's the Berkeley Review of Education, and you can see the different articles highlighted here. So it's really simple. You just select the title to view the full text. So you can see immediately that's easier if we just Googled this article title or this institution's repository. It's so much easier to access the content. We don't have to enter in a password or create an account or anything like that. Okay, so another example would be an open access textbook that's housed in an institutional repository. This is one from Grand Valley State University in Michigan. So it's a textbook called Writing Spaces. It can be used for, introductory English or composition writing classes. And you can see how they've arranged it, which is by chapter. So you can just download individual chapters freely. You can download the entire textbook. And then there's also an option to buy this book, which means you can just simply pay for a print copy if that's what the user would prefer. But it's the cost is still drastically reduced from most textbook costs. So it's $23 to get that in full, to actually get the hardcover copy. And then you can see it's available in other formats, CD, things like that. So it's all kind of designed around this idea of access, right? They want to provide access, whether it's freely on the web or downloaded to your computer, your mobile device, whatever's going to work best for you to get the actual content. Okay, so we looked at an article, an open access article and journal, an open educational resource or textbook. This is some special collections examples. So this is from Arizona State University and a project they did with oral histories. So you can see it's divided into the oral history project, and then you can very easily access the content again. So this one is divided by the interviews that they did. If you select the title of one, you'll be taken to the record with some of that defining data, and then you simply click the link to access the full text PDF, and this is just a transcript of that interview. So it leaves open some possibilities, right? So even though this one is just a transcript, a document, you could also have audio files, you could have images of the participants, so the possibilities are endless. Okay, and then the last example we're going to look at is from a small school, a small private school, and it's some of their institutional documentation. So at Bennington College, they have theirs divided by department. So this one is admissions publications. So you can see how a repository might provide a service for departments you wouldn't have necessarily thought of. So admissions documentation like pamphlets or informational materials are available. This is an example of one. It's from the 80s, so it does kind of overlap into special collections. It could be in both, but it's in it, and it gives it its identity by staying as part of the admissions community. And then this is just the full text example. Okay, so we looked at lots of examples. The content is obviously very varied from different institution to institution, and there's room to grow. So why is it important to have an institutional repository? We talked a little bit about, it's being preserved for the long term. So digital preservation is a really important part of it. The stable digital environment allows the institution not to rely on hardware or software or have to worry about updating links in catalogs and things like that. So it does provide a stable place to access materials. And then even if the content is not digital, it's not born in a digital environment, we can digitize it to keep that content preserved. In the example of some of that admissions pamphlet or the transcript. It's also important, especially with special collections and historical documentation, because it helps to preserve the campus's or the university's legacy or history or uniqueness. I'm sure you all have heard about different schools merging, changing. We're all kind of adapting on a daily basis, so it's nice to be able to keep those historical documents and our history in one place, and then also make it available to more than just anyone who can come, and visit the special collections department. Okay. Institutional repositories are also really important for open access purposes, right? So we looked at the open access textbook and journal articles, and this is part of that culture of sharing. The open access means that access is available unrestricted to anyone. So no subscription costs, no 12-month embargoes to access an article, and increased sharing of information and possibilities for collaboration. So to me, it makes sense for researchers and scholars, right? You don't write your journal articles or do your research for it to be in this closed journal and for no one to really get to see it unless, or not no one, but smaller populations. So that's the point of the open access, just sharing that information, getting it out there. And again, if it's housed in an institutional repository, Google searches as well as traffic through the university's or the library's website will also take you there. So it increases that discoverability of the content. So also in talking with open access is something called an access gap. This is an example. So some of the Ivy League schools like Harvard and Yale have huge budgets, right? And therefore many subscriptions. This example references the Indian Institute of Science, which has about 1/10 of the subscriptions as Harvard. So you can see immediately that's an access gap, right? There are things like interlibrary loan to get some articles, but still the amount of information available to Harvard students and faculty members and staff members is so much greater than the Indian Institute. But you can think about it with other examples too. So what about the Ivy League schools versus smaller state schools or community colleges? What about private versus public versus for-profit? So there are lots of different environments, different academic environments where the access to information is not an equal playing field. And this is the goal of open access and institutional repositories, is to make it a little bit more level so that more people can access more information more easily.
Okay, so where does the university system and where do libraries come into play with all of this? So I'm going to answer that with kind of a bit of a history lesson. 10 years ago, around 2004, a little more than 10 years ago, the creative and intellectual output of the university system was not as easily shared, easily retrieved. Most things, whether they were born digital or print, most things existed in limited hard copy formats, or they would be on a web page or a server, hardware, software. But that's not exactly permanent, or has the potential not to be permanent. So a group of librarians, being the caretakers of information that we are, got together in summer and fall of 2004 at the RACL meeting to kind of discuss the phenomenon that was happening on campus. And institutional repositories, which had been growing for a number of decades, were kind of seen as the answer. So early on, the early leads would be Georgia Institute of Technology or Georgia Tech. They actually already had their own institutional repository called Smart Tech, and University of Georgia was just beginning to start theirs around 2004. So they were seen as natural leaders of this initiative. But then Georgia Southern, Georgia State, and the Medical College of Georgia, with their really strong research initiatives, were also interested. So those 5 schools, Georgia Tech, UGA, GSUs, and the Medical College of Georgia, formed a committee to begin to develop institutional repositories in the system. They developed guidelines, they sought professional development in the area, and most importantly, they looked for grant funding, because a lot of this is really expensive. Educating librarians, educating other faculty members, it's very difficult. So eventually in 2009, they were awarded a grant by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, a fairly substantial grant to develop institutional repositories in the system. So what came out of that is now called the Georgia Knowledge Repository, or GKR. And GKR kind of serves 2 services. First, it is that digital archive that we've seen. Actually, it's kind of a repository of repositories. Georgia Tech still has their Smart Tech, UGA has one. They all have their individual institutional repositories, but now Georgia Knowledge Repository kind of serves as an umbrella repository, kind of getting a fed from all these individuals. But then they also serve a second service in that professional development, offering services encouraging other institutions to start their own, to build a repository, to educate faculty on copyright compliance. Okay, if you have any kind of federally funded grant research, particularly within National Institute of Health, for instance, you know that you're mandated to make your scholarly research open access. So that's kind of what GKR has done in the past couple of years. They've only launched in 2013, but they've been really working behind the scenes to do a lot of those things. And of course, it's part of our wider Galileo initiative, meaning that all the libraries across the state are really working together to kind of bring this about. All right, so Georgia's Knowledge Repository is what came out of that Library and Museum Services grant. So the 5 grew to 14. So there are 14 individual institutions across the state that actually participate. These institutions represent over 80,000 individually curated items. So May of 2014, there were 80,000 items in the Georgia Knowledge Repository. Okay, so these are going to be like many of the items that Ms. Kirkley mentioned. These are going to be a lot of the articles that faculty purchase. They're going to be special collections material, yearbook, images. But then there are going to be a lot of things that aren't as easily shared that we don't think about, like student research posters and working papers, white papers, presentations we give at conferences that aren't as easily shared in like a print journal or on a web page. Now, Mercer University was the latest to join just last month, and now that number is over the 100,000. Okay, so you have a lot of different institutions really joining in to make this happen. And each individual repository is going to look dramatically different from the next. Okay? So we all feed into the Georgia Knowledge Repository, but each individual repository at the university level is going to be different because they have different needs. They have different students, they have different faculty, they have different creative and intellectual output, they have different needs. So this is Georgia State University, again, one of the first 5. They're called Scholar Works at Georgia State University. This is what their landing page looks like if you were to go to their web page. Georgia Southern, it looks like this. Digital Commons at Georgia Southern. Okay. This is the Medical College of Georgia. It had one of those transitional periods. Now they're the Georgia Regents University. This is what they look like. Okay, so they're very unique to the institutions that they serve. So we don't lose any of that being a part of GKR, and we can really make it our own if we were to participate. Now the great thing about it is you can go to these individual pages, and that's what the university communities really do. They go to these pages, they share research, they see what collaborators across campus are doing, what their students are doing, but everything still feeds back into that wider umbrella repository, the Georgia Knowledge Repository. Okay, so the librarians work and they do a lot of behind the scenes, what's called metadata creation. That way, whatever we're inputting in, whatever you guys choose to put in, that it's able to talk to things like this Georgia Knowledge Repository. So I just want to quickly show you what that will look like. Okay, so this is the Georgia Knowledge Repository homepage. Again, it's part of the Galileo initiative, so this is in Galileo here on campus as well. And the search techniques and the search features are just the same as that Galileo Discover tool that we already know how to use. So if you wanted to search the content, the 100,000 items that I mentioned that are in the Georgia Knowledge Repository, throw in a subject, throw in a term, maybe a title of a presentation, or you can throw in an author. Okay, so I'm just going to put in my name and click on Go. Okay, and you see it's actually searching Galileo. And this screen looks almost exactly like just a simple Galileo search that we probably conduct every day. Except what's pulled up is going to be all that open access repository information that have something to do with Otto Johnson. In this case, things that I've authored over the year. And you'll see, my previous institution was Georgia Regents. So you see that right here, that they're pulling from Georgia Regents and a lot of these little item records. But then also, I did a presentation at Georgia Southern. So this last one's actually from the Institutional Repository at Georgia Southern. And what's really interesting about this, just kind of from a personal note, that not only is it easily retrieved, but I can really find out what type of folks are using this material as well. So you can click on the title, it'll pull up all that behind the scenes data that I mentioned librarians input behind the scenes. The URL will just take you straight to it. Okay. I could click on this thumbnail, it'll pull up the presentation that I gave in August of 2013. And like I say, it's just a matter of clicking on statistics or contacting the librarian who manages the repository, and I can pull up all different types of statistics about who's downloaded content, where are they from, okay? So not only is it easily accessed, it's permanently available forever. I don't ever have to upload it to something else because I have a permanent URL here, but then I can also just check out if people are actually using it.
And Ms. Johnson mentioned in our first presentation that URI, or that reliable link, can also, you can put that on your CV, your resume, your web profile, so that there is a much easier way to access content. You don't have to walk someone through the steps of accessing it. It's just that one click.
Personal web pages are going to change. You might change institutions. So if everything's housed on Savannah State and you move on across the country, that's a lot of migrating content. But using that permanent reliable link just gives it a secure location. And like Ms. Kirkley was alluding to, not only are we going to be able to find things in the Georgia Knowledge Repository, not only can we go to the individual pages and find these things, but any internet-based search engine like Google is going to pull up your research, okay? Quick search, information literacy, information architecture. It's still a very broad topic, but you'll notice, you get some things from ACES, the Journal of Information Literacy here. The third retrieved item on this kind of broad topic is my presentation at Georgia Southern. And that's simply just a presentation. It's certainly not a scholarly article or anything that you're probably having published already, but under that is the ALA Wiki. So it has considerable power as well. So you do one submission, submit it to a repository, and it's able to be retrieved and accessed in a number of ways. So that's just really cool on a personal note. So again, it all feeds into Google and things like that. So that brings us to Savannah State and how we're going to be involved in this really growing phenomenon across the state and across the world, really. We were invited to participate, so hopefully we'll get everything launched really soon and we'll be lucky number 16. And this is basically how we're shaping everything to look, okay? Now, there are a lot of initiatives that the library is already involved in the past couple of years, so this is just a natural progression of that. Obviously, you've probably heard of Affordable Learning Georgia, where we're getting grant monies and we're really encouraging faculty to develop these open educational resources. This will fit in line, because now we have a hosting platform. But then we also have been doing things like the special collections, where we've been digitizing yearbooks, Richard R. Wright papers, things that we've had safekeeping in the special collections area, but that weren't accessible to alumni and researchers across the country and across the globe. So again, this answers that problem as well. And this way, we can keep track of the statistics and all the information about it as well. So this is what it looks like. And if you're on that Look Back homepage, you can just click on Tiger Scholar Commons and kind of look at it if you want. So if you're on this, you can click on Tiger Scholar Commons and it will open up for you. This is a preview site, so we're not officially launched. So just kind of keep in mind that this is just a sandbox. But we have already worked, Ms. Kirkland, Ms. Ogden, and I, to build the structure of the repository. Like most institutions, there will be placeholders for every college, department, and office on campus. And how these areas take shape will really depend on the offices and faculty that get really invested in this. Now, we do have some folks that are really interested before we do a hard launch in the fall, and I'll talk about timeline in a minute, but this is a remarkable opportunity for the entire university community to share what they've been doing. Now, it says 0 right here, again, because we're talking about a sandbox. But if you just click on University Yearbooks, you'll see that we've already been busy putting all of our digitized yearbooks in the repository in multiple formats. Okay, PDF, HTML links. Ms. Kirkley mentioned, if we had oral history we could read, we'd have the transcripts, pictures, video. Okay, the sky's really the limit. We have a ton of space here. And so if you have video, like QEP Office is interested in sharing some of their lectures they've been offering in a permanent way, they'll be able to put video content as well. Now again, it's a sandbox, but if you click on Tiger 1974, any of the titles of the yearbooks, it'll pull up some more of that behind the scenes stuff that the librarians work on. Okay, that metadata. So we do the work once, we submit it, the librarians add some few details in the background, but then this will be able to be shared in the Georgia Knowledge Repository and then Google. So kind of the theme of this is just openness. It's just really going to increase the visibility of the university, what everyone's doing here, and it's just going to be so much more easily discoverable in a permanent way. So you are definitely free to kind of look at that as well. This is our timeline. Now, we've been working on the preview site, educate different library staff about from January to March, and we're just kind of using today as an informal way to introduce this concept to anyone who's interested. We'll spend the summer populating with all of our digitized special collections content, but then also all the research that librarians have been doing, and anyone who's actually interested in participating before we officially launch in the fall. And I mentioned the QEP office, they're going to be interested in doing a lot of that stuff with us. We hope to launch it towards the end of summer in time for that General Assembly and the Fall Institute, so we can really just get faculty really excited about the kind of things that we can do with it. So this is our timeline for Tiger Scholar Commons. So obviously assessment and there's going to be a lot of testing along in that, but August 2015 is our goal. In the meantime, anyone who's interested, obviously both of us are available, but this LibGuide that URL is shared at the bottom of your handout and it's on the screen in front of you has more information about things that we could just touch on really topically here. If you're interested in how maybe we can have an article that's already published in an open repository and the kind of copyright guidelines, this will give you some more information about that. But if you can't find the information in the LibGuide, there's a lot of information in here, but not everything. Ms. Kirkley, Ms. Ogden, and myself are available to answer any maybe unique questions you have about the resources you're interested in sharing in this way. So very excited. We're very excited about it anyway. So, any questions? Comments? Suggestions?
I will say once it's launched, there will be a pretty simple submission process where you just fill out a form, attach whatever document or file you'd like to upload. So that information will kind of be forthcoming closer to the launch date. But again, any questions or individual situations you'd like to discuss, we are available.
And for the most part, the hard work is behind the scenes of the librarians with that metadata. So it's a very simple submission process. Simply like attaching